What up to my Rival Fantasy Sports family? I am your host, Neil Maligno. You are tuned in to Not So Obvious Locks of Week 8. These are players who are not ranked inside the consensus top 10 this week, but who have the upside to finish there. Always remember that your roster decisions ultimately belong to you. So use my advice as a tool, but you make the final decision always. I keep these episodes quick hitting. If you want longer or interactive content, subscribe to our YouTube channel, catch our weekly live episodes, including our Start City Advice live stream every Sunday at 11:30 a.m. EST. Now let's go ahead and jump into the not so obvious locks of the week. Quarterback Gardner Minshew fumbled the ball 3 times, threw 1 interception, all of this in week 7 against the Browns, and he still finished as the QB3 because he also threw for over 300 yards, 2 passing touchdowns, and rushed for 2 more touchdowns. My boy Minshew cannot be stopped. On a serious note though, Minshew really needs to bring down the interceptions and the fumbles as they are holding him and the Colts back from really flourishing at a higher level. However, it's great to see him having productive fantasy weeks even with the mistakes, so imagine the upside if he can clean them up. Minus the miscues, he's a bunch of fun to watch. He's exciting to have on your fantasy team. Minshew is my not so obvious lock at quarterback for week 8. Josh Jacobs is ranked outside the top 10 everywhere, mostly landing somewhere between RB13 and RB15. There are some who ranked him as top 10 worthy, but we are few and far between. Through 7 weeks of football, Josh Jacobs is RB11 in PPR scoring, averaging 13.5 points per game. Even with the Raiders offense struggling, Jacobs is number 3 in rushing attempts this season, and he leads the league in passing targets to running backs. Now let's think about this for 1 second. If it's a big if, but if Josh McDaniels and the Raiders get this offense back on track, which I know has been embarrassing up till now, Jacobs then becomes a home run at running back. The Detroit Lions defense is pretty good, but totally capable of allowing big games to running backs. Heck, just ask Gus Edwards in week 7 or Kenneth Walker earlier this season. The Raiders might not win on Monday Night Football, but Josh Jacobs is my not so obvious lock at running back for week 8. Drake London has had highs and lows this season, 0 points in week 1, 5 points in week 3, but don't let that throw you off the fact that he has scored 11 points or more in 5 out of 7 weeks in PPR scoring. Drake is no doubt seeing a strong workload with 6 targets or more in 6 out of 7 weeks, and in October alone, he's had 24 receptions, 285 receiving yards, and 1 touchdown. Facing a weak Titans pass defense in week 8 presents Drake with the opportunity for a big game, making him my not so obvious lock at wide receiver this week. Logan Thomas is playing the Philadelphia Eagles at home in Washington in week 8. Logan has already played them this season in Philly, grabbing 7 fantasy points off 3 catches and 41 yards. The Eagles defense has allowed some great games to tight ends this season like Hawkinson and Henry. While they've also denied some tight ends, you have to ask yourself, were those tight ends actually good? Logan Thomas is part of a heavy passing offense in Washington. He's currently ranked tight end 13 in fantasy after missing 1 game, and he's my not so obvious lock of week 8 at tight end. Now, if you want more fantasy advice from Rival Fantasy Sports, subscribe to our YouTube for new content and live shows, including our weekly Start City Advice show, live streaming every Sunday at 11:30 EST before kickoff. If you prefer audio only, subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Follow us on all social medias for the latest app updates, promos, and up-to-the-minute news and sports. Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, all at Rival Fantasy. And of course, visit rivalfantasy.com or download the Rival Fantasy Sports app today. Start your season-long league there, play challenges, play fantasy bingo. We've even introduced in-league betting, so if you do have a fantasy league on Rival Fantasy, it's the only platform where you can do in-league betting versus your league mates. You can bet on the other matchups in the league that even you aren't a part of. It's a whole lot of fun. We're innovating over there at the space, so get that one fantasy platform to rule them all, rivalfantasy.com, or download the Rival Fantasy Sports app today. I am your host, Neil. This is Not So Obvious Locks of Week 8, and I'm out.